everyone. I am here with the author of Beneath a Red Hunter's Moon, Tara Grímravn. Hi, Tara.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So I'm excited about your debut novel that's going to be coming out soon.
Oh, absolutely.
But when I was reading your bio, one thing that struck out to me is that you have a deep family history of storytelling. How did your family really get you on the path to becoming an author?
Well, there were two people in my life that kind of really did that. First is my grandmother and my mother. So growing up, my grandmother is from the Appalachians in Tennessee. And she would tell us a lot of tales that she had heard from her own grandparents. So to give some context, she grew up poor in a small house at the foothills of the Appalachians. She was raised by her half Cherokee grandparents. And the stories that her grandfather told were passed on to us. So, but it wasn't just the stories and legends, but she also told these stories about the people and places that she knew. Like, for example, she had the Peter Cave, which was a big family joke. And there was one call about this. She would tell us about this woman named Ellie Iliad. And aside from having a really cool name, Ellie was just this really odd character. And like, for example, she refused to sleep at home. She had a home, but she wouldn't sleep there. She would actually take her life savings in a jar and go sleep in the family cemetery because she figured if somebody was going to come and rob her, they wouldn't look in the graveyard. So there was just all these stories that would come out of it. And, you know, my mother, on the other hand, loves antiques and she loves cemeteries. And so from her, I love for archaeology and old objects. Because she would see the lives of people in these objects that came with present. So so, and you know, when we were kids, she would pull us around from cemetery to cemetery. There's tons of these old forgotten cemeteries in Michigan, and where there would be stones from like the 17 and 1800s, and she would think about what this person was like and try to figure out their life story. And so I kind of spent a lot of time. I spent every day with these two women. Until 2009, when I moved to the Southwest. So I was kind of steeped in this mythology, and that's kind of where a lot of my storytelling comes from. So,
right. So going around seeing objects, who was this person? What was their story? That's really interesting and romantic feeling to me.
Yeah.
To the graveyard story. No.
Yeah, that one usually weirds people out, but you know.
Okay, so now, but that led to a degree in archaeology.
Right.
So how did archaeology kind of play into your writing of your novel, and does it aid you in doing that, in writing?
Actually, it does, especially in epic fantasy in general. You're building worlds and cultures, which in a large way are informed by modern cultures, but in fantasy, it's informed by previous cultures. So you get a really good understanding of how culture works and how it affects people and how they interact with their environment. And the various theories of archaeology also inform how that everything fits together. Yeah. So I use that in the development a lot of the world building and the cultures and how my characters interact and how they behave and all that. So.
Great. So I was reading, your synopsis for the novel, and I was wondering, did you take any inspiration from the Odyssey? Because it kind of seemed that way to me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So especially the Drusidian culture, which is my main character's culture, there's heavy influence from ancient Rome and ancient Greece in there. So absolutely, there's a ton of it in there. So it's fun that you pick up on the Odyssey.
Yeah, right away.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's exciting. Okay. So in the book you tend to switch points of view often. What was there any sort of inspiration for that? An author that did that, or what helped you to come up with that idea?
Honestly, my very first iteration of the book was a one point of view book. But as I moved forward with working on Beneath the Red Hunter's Moon, it became quickly very clear that the only way to tell the story properly was to include a lot of characters. I couldn't get the whole scope and make the story work with one point of view. Okay. So it really kind of ended up just kind of organically growing. There really wasn't there really was not a particular author that did it. I mean, I like George R.R. Martin and stories like that, but it wasn't the trigger.
Yeah. Okay, great. Wow. Okay. So, do you want to give a little synopsis of the novel so that your watchers know what it's about?
Sure. So it is kind of a complicated book. I'm not going to lie. It is about 8 to 9 main characters, which about split almost evenly between villains and our antagonists and protagonists, and several different plot lines that run through it. So, but basically, the main premise is that this rogue god Fark, he begins to introduce undeath into Burden's mortal realm of Akalan, which is it's never been seen before. Okay. By doing this, he threatens the Pantheon's food source, which is the life essence of mortals. Oh. And so the gods have to react because they're facing starvation and eventually oblivion. Right. So in order to find a way to put an end to his schemes, they start manipulating the mortal realm, and specifically one person. They find a champion because Fark has chosen one of his own to kind of lead his empire of undeath in the mortal realm. So they pick their champion, which happens to be Ligeia, my main character. Okay. And they manipulate her life to the point where she's falsely accused of murder. She's exiled. And the following events are she finds out that Tergovish, which is where Fark has kind of started his campaign, is now her homeland is now being threatened. Tergovish is threatening her homeland. So she has to amass an army, which she's lost because she's now exiled. And that's kind of the impetus. She ends up marching on Tergovish and running headlong into this god who has decided he's going to take over the world through one death. So
okay.
So that's basically it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's a lot. So how far? How many pages do you think it will be once you're finished?
I think once it's completed, I'm probably looking at a good 700 pages. I that's what I'm thinking. Maybe if I'm lucky, I might be able to finish it in about 500.
Okay.
So I'm really hoping not to go 1,000 pages. I really am.
But that genre, I mean, it kind of that's what happens with that genre. Right. You know, that's not odd. So, you know, my measly little 170 pages. So, okay. So the one character that really struck out to me was Iskra. Mm-hmm. Now she starts off in the book as a little girl, and you have her, you know, at several times aging. So, how important and how were you able to show her the change between child to adult and keep her voice and keep who she is, but with a change?
Okay. So again, the thing with her with Iskra is that she's kind of she's on one hand, she's a tragic anti-hero, and on the other, she's a secondary villain. So she's kind of I want people to feel sorry for her, and at the same time, she's not exactly the best person either. And it all has to do with the fact of how she grew up and how her history directly relates to Fark, this god who's kind of decided he's taking everything over. And so I chose to show her in these various stages, and there's 4. I think we see her at 10, at 17, at 27, and then 45. So there's definite intervals there. Right. Because her story is so wrapped up in Fark's plan, his actions and his desires, I had to show her at these various stages. Otherwise, the adult Iskra wouldn't make sense. And adult Iskra is the bulk of the novel. Okay. So really, it wasn't that difficult to change from point to point because it's only a few scenes here with 10-year-old. It's with 10-year-old Iskra. It's a few scenes with one scene with 17-year-old Iskra, a couple with 27, and then the rest of the book is 45. Okay, so you really see her. You get the biggest, I think, bulk of her character is going to be when she's 27. It's not the bulk of the book, but you get a really good feel for why she's doing the things she's doing, but I needed to show those stages in order for her to make sense and to get across why she's making the choices she makes. Okay. And again, she's so intertwined with the rest of them. Right. There's no escaping for her what she's in, and there never has been, and which is very cruel of me to say. But
yeah.
But it's just
born into it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so do you think that you have a plan for a sequel on this one?
Probably not. I've considered it. If I have a sequel, it won't be probably with the same characters, because this is pretty much a standalone novel itself. It will be in the same. It might be in the same world. The characters will appear in various novels, but they won't necessarily be related to this one. And because it's a multiverse, those characters might not appear even in the same world. I actually have some planned for some of the deities that are in completely different worlds altogether. So.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Wow. That's great. Okay. Well, I am so excited for it to come out. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay.